The world of Thesara had forgotten the meaning of mercy. For 3 cycles of the broken moon, rain had hammered the lands without pause, turning valleys into lakes and mountains into islands. The coastline, once proud with its silver beaches and trading ports, now drowned beneath muddy torrents that swallowed everything humans had built. Zareth watched it all from her perch high in the crimson peaks. She was old by any measure, her scales bearing the copper patina of centuries, her eyes holding memories of skies that once knew peace. The volcanic caverns had been her home since the Great Wars, since her kind had retreated from a world that no longer wanted dragons in its story. Tonight the storm screamed with particular violence. Lightning split the darkness in jagged white scars, illuminating the chaos below for heartbeat intervals. Zareth stood at the mouth of her cave, feeling rain hammer against her chest plates, watching the swollen river tear through the canyon like an angry serpent. Then she saw the light, a desperate flicker of orange pulsing against the black water. Emergency beacons, the kind humans mounted on their transport vessels. The ship itself was already destroyed, reduced to twisted metal scattered across the rocks. But something still moved in the current, fighting with the stubborn rhythm of life, refusing to surrender. Zareth's first instinct was to turn away. Humans had brought their own disasters, building cities where rivers wanted to run, ignoring the warnings written in ancient weather patterns. She had watched them repeat the same mistakes for generations, too proud to listen, too rushed to learn. But the struggling figure disappeared beneath a wave, and in that moment, she heard something else. A sound that cut through the storm's roar and found the hollow place in her chest. The sound of desperate gasping, of a heart beating its final defiant rhythm against impossible odds. Her wings snapped open before her mind finished deciding. The scarred left wing protested immediately, the old injury from the wars sending sharp complaints along her nerves. She ignored it, launching from the ledge into the teeth of the storm. Wind slammed into her like a physical wall. Rain turned the air thick and hostile. But Zareth had flown through worse, had once danced with hurricanes for the pure joy of it. Her wings remembered, even if they no longer obeyed perfectly. She dove toward the churning water, eyes locked on the spot where the human had vanished. The current here was vicious, full of debris and broken machinery. She pulled her wings tight and plunged beneath the surface. The underwater world was chaos given form. Cables whipped past like striking snakes. Chunks of metal tumbled in the current with lethal momentum. Zareth's superior vision cut through the murk, searching, scanning. There, a hand, reaching upward through the brown water, fingers spread in one last attempt to touch air. Zareth's talons closed around the human's torso, gentle despite their size, and she kicked hard against the current. Her powerful legs drove them upward, back toward the surface, back toward breath. They broke into air together. The human coughed violently, expelling river water in ragged heaves. Zareth angled toward her cave, wings straining against the weight and the wind, her injured side screaming protests she refused to acknowledge. The flight back was measured in heartbeats and wing strokes, each one a negotiation with pain and possibility. When she finally crossed the threshold into her cavern, her muscles were trembling with exhaustion. She laid the human on a smooth shelf, a volcanic stone, shaped by her own fire over lonely years. He was unconscious now, his breathing shallow but steady. Young for a human, perhaps 30 cycles, with the weathered hands of someone who worked with tools. His clothes were torn, skin scraped raw in places, but nothing appeared broken beyond healing. Zareth curled her body around him, not touching but creating a wall of warmth. Her internal fire, the furnace that all dragons carried, raised the temperature of the air between them. Steam began to rise from his soaked clothing. The algae lamps responded to her presence, their bioluminescent glow strengthening until the cave was bathed in soft green light. On the walls, ancient murals caught the illumination. Dragons in flight, carved by fire in better times. Zareth had stopped looking at them years ago, but tonight they seemed to watch this strange scene with quiet interest. The human stirred, coughing again. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening with the clarity of someone trained to assess situations quickly. "Easy," Zareth said, her voice a low rumble that vibrated through the stone. "You are safe." He tried to speak, managed only a croak. She moved to a natural basin in the rock where rainwater collected, clean and cold, and brought it to him in a shallow bowl carved from obsidian. He drank with desperate gratitude. "Where?" He started, then stopped, taking in his surroundings, taking in her. "My home," Zareth said simply. "You were drowning." I interfered. His eyes traveled across her form, noting the massive wings folded against her sides, the copper scales that reflected the algae light, the careful distance she maintained, not fear in his gaze, but wonder mixed with confusion. "Thank you," he managed finally, the words rough but sincere. "I'm Tobias. Tobias Reed." "Zareth," she replied, inclining her great head slightly. "You should rest. The storm will continue, for some time, and you have lost much strength to the river." "My equipment," Tobias said, trying to sit up. "I had cases, tools." "They followed you." Zareth gestured with her snout toward a pile of battered containers near the cave entrance. "The current carried them after you. I gathered what I could." Relief washed across his face, followed immediately by embarrassment. "You saved me and my gear. I don't know how to." "Sleep," Zareth interrupted, not unkindly. "Gratitude can wait for morning. Right now your body needs silence and warmth." Tobias nodded, exhaustion finally overwhelming his need to understand this impossible situation. Within moments, his breathing deepened into sleep. Zareth settled herself nearby, close enough to maintain the warmth, far enough to respect the space between dragon and human, between ancient loneliness and unexpected companionship. Outside, the storm continued its rage, but inside the cavern, two heartbeats found an unexpected rhythm together. The night stretched on, measured in rain and breath and the quiet miracle of survival. Morning arrived not with sunlight, but with a softening of the storm's fury. The rain fell straighter now, no longer hurled sideways by vengeful winds. In the cavern, Tobias woke to the strange reality of warmth radiating from living scales and the gentle sound of a dragon's breathing. He sat up slowly, cataloging his injuries with the methodical attention of someone who had patched himself up before. Bruised ribs, scraped palms, a twisted ankle that protested when he shifted weight. Nothing catastrophic. He had been lucky beyond measure. Zareth watched him from across the chamber, her copper eyes reflecting the algae glow. "You assess yourself like a soldier," she observed. "Field engineer," Tobias corrected, managing a weak smile. "Close enough, I suppose. We learn to keep inventory of what still works." He paused, looking at her properly now in the dim light. "May I ask about your wing?" The question hung in the air. Dragons did not share vulnerabilities easily, especially not with humans. But something in his tone lacked the sharpness of pity. It carried the same practical assessment he had just applied to himself. "The wars," Zareth said finally. "When my kind chose to leave the open skies rather than continue fighting over territory. Humans claimed as theirs. A missile found me during the retreat. The wing healed, but never correctly." Tobias's expression darkened with something that looked like shame, though he had been a child during those conflicts. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "My people have a talent for breaking beautiful things, and for surviving what should destroy them." Zareth countered. "You clung to wreckage in a river that has swallowed mountains. That requires something beyond mere stubbornness." He laughed, a short bark of sound that seemed to surprise him. "My crew called it too dumb to know when to quit. The transport was evacuating researchers from the coastal station. I stayed behind to secure the fuel cells. Thought I had time." He shook his head. "The flood had other ideas." "The others?" "Got out 3 days before. I confirmed it on the emergency channel before the water took the relay tower." Relief colored his words. They made it to high ground. Zareth felt something unknot in her chest, though she could not name exactly what. "Then your stubbornness was in service of something. That is different from mere recklessness. Tobias pulled himself to his feet, testing the ankle. It held, barely. He limped to his salvaged equipment and began opening cases with practiced efficiency. Water damage had claimed some items, but others had survived in sealed compartments. He laid them out like a surgeon preparing instruments. "Your ventilation system," he said, pointing to a grated opening in the cave wall. "It's partially blocked. That's why the air feels heavy. If you'll allow it, I could clear the obstruction. It's what I do, keeping systems breathing when they want to give up." Zareth tilted her head, intrigued. "You offer payment for rescue with repair work?" "I offer it because I can't sit still," Tobias admitted. "And because your home has been kinder to me than I deserved. Let me give something back." She considered this, then gestured her consent with a wing. Tobias gathered tools and approached the vent opening. What followed was a display of focused competence that Zareth found oddly compelling to watch. He worked with gentle precision, speaking softly to corroded bolts as if coaxing them to cooperate rather than forcing compliance. Within an hour, he had cleared mineral deposits and debris from the ventilation shaft. When he bridged power to the system using a portable cell, air began to circulate with a soft hum that the cavern had not produced in years. The change was immediate. Warmer air from the deep volcanic chambers rose and mixed with the cooler surface flow, creating a comfortable circulation. The algae lamps brightened in response to improved conditions. Even the stone seemed to exhale with relief. "It remembers," Zareth said softly, wonder touching her voice. "I had forgotten it could sound like this." Tobias wiped his hands on his torn shirt, satisfaction evident in his posture despite his exhaustion. Good systems want to work. They just need someone to listen to what's stopping them. They fell into an unexpected rhythm over the following days. Tobias worked on various mechanical failures throughout the cavern, systems Zareth had long ago accepted as broken. In return, she brought him food, roots she roasted with her breath until they caramelized, and fresh water from underground springs only she could reach. But more than material exchange, they traded something deeper. Stories. Zareth spoke of Thesara before the floods, of thermal updrafts that could carry a dragon for miles without a single wing beat, of the singing competitions her clutch had held in the high peaks where the air was thin and every note carried for leagues. Tobias countered with memories of his homeworld, a place called Earth that he had left seeking adventure in the colonies. He described cities built of glass and optimism, wheat fields that rolled like golden oceans, and the particular silence of snowfall in a forest where he had learned to be alone without being lonely. "You carry sadness," Zareth observed one evening as they shared a meal. "Not from the storm. Something older." Tobias was quiet for a long moment, hands wrapped around a cup of hot broth. "Her name was Jenna," he said finally. "My wife. She died in a transit accident 2 years ago. I took this posting on Thesara because staying on Earth meant living in a house full of her absence." "And here?" Zareth asked gently. "Here the absence follows me, but at least it has different walls to echo in." He looked up at her, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Does it ever stop hurting?" Zareth thought of her clutch, of eggs that had never hatched after the wars poisoned the thermal vents, of sisters who had flown into storms and never returned. "No," she said honestly, "but the hurt becomes a different shape. Less like a wound, more like a scar that you carry with strange gratitude because it proves something mattered enough to leave a mark." Tobias nodded slowly, as if accepting a truth he had suspected but needed to hear spoken. On the 5th day, he approached the subject both had been avoiding. "Your wing," he said. "I think I can help." Zareth's instinct was refusal. Dragons did not accept pity or charity, especially from humans, but she looked at this man who had mourned his wife and still chose to fix broken things, and found she could not dismiss the offer. "Show me," she said. Tobias examined the wing with careful hands, noting where the membrane had healed incorrectly, where scar tissue pulled the delicate structures out of alignment. "I can't fix everything," he admitted, "but I can build a brace, something to support the weak points and distribute the stress more evenly. It won't give you back what you lost, but it might give you back some of what's possible." "Why would you do this?" He met her eyes, human to dragon, soul to soul. "Because you're not broken, Zareth. You're just carrying damage that never got the right care. And because I know what it's like to have wings, real or metaphorical, that can't quite lift you anymore." The brace took 2 days to construct, Tobias used materials from his equipment combined with volcanic glass he shaped using Zareth's fire, creating a framework of elegant efficiency. When he finally fitted it to her wing, adjusting tensions with infinite patience, Zareth felt something she had not experienced in years. Hope. She extended the wing slowly, testing. The brace caught and supported, turning weakness into possibility. The membrane stretched without the familiar tearing sensation. The joint moved through its full range without screaming protest. "Try it," Tobias urged, stepping back. Zareth crouched and pushed upward, wings spreading in a powerful downstroke. She rose 3 feet off the cavern floor, hung suspended for a glorious moment, then settled back down with control rather than collapse. The sound that escaped her was half laugh, half sob. "I had forgotten," she whispered. "I had forgotten this." Tobias grinned, exhaustion and joy mixing on his face. "Now you remember." That night they sat together at the cave mouth, watching the storm finally begin to break. Gaps appeared in the clouds, revealing glimpses of stars that Thessera had not seen in months. "What will you do?" Zareth asked. "When the waters recede and your people come looking?" "I don't know," Tobias admitted. "What I came here running from is still there, still waiting. But maybe I'm different now. Maybe that matters." "You fixed more than my wing," Zareth said quietly. "You reminded me that isolation is a choice, not a sentence." They sat in comfortable silence, dragon and human, 2 damaged souls who had found unexpected healing in each other's company. The morning the storm finally broke arrived with startling clarity. Tobias woke to actual sunlight streaming through the cave entrance, the first he had seen since the transport went down. The quality of light on Thessera was different from Earth's, slightly more amber, but it carried the same promise of new beginnings. Zareth was already at the entrance, wings half spread to catch the warmth. The brace Tobias had built gleamed where volcanic glass met organic membrane, a marriage of engineering and nature that somehow looked meant to be. "Today," she announced, "I fly. Truly fly, not just hover like a nervous fledgling." Tobias felt his stomach tighten with concern. "Are you sure? Maybe we should test it more gradually." "I have been gradual for 7 years," Zareth interrupted, but her tone held affection rather than irritation. "I know my body, Tobias Reed, and I know your work. The wing is as ready as it will ever be." She turned her massive head to look at him directly. "But I need you to understand something. If I fail, if the brace breaks or the wing gives out, it will not be your fault. Some things are broken beyond complete repair. What matters is that you gave me the chance to try." Tobias swallowed hard and nodded. "Then let's do this properly. Let me check the fittings one more time." He approached the wing with the familiarity they had developed over days of careful work. His hands traced the brace's connection points, testing tensions, ensuring nothing had shifted during the night. Zareth held perfectly still, patient in a way that spoke of deep trust. "Everything looks solid," Tobias confirmed, stepping back. "The frame will hold. The question is whether I remember how to be what I was," Zareth finished. Only one way to discover that answer. She moved to the broad ledge that jutted from the cave entrance, a natural launching platform. Below, the floodwaters were finally retreating, revealing the scarred landscape they had ravaged. Trees stood like broken fingers, stripped of leaves and bark. Buildings lay collapsed, crushed by the weight of water that had risen faster than anyone predicted. But the river itself was returning to its proper boundaries, no longer a raging monster but a natural force flowing where geology intended. And above, the sky opened in brilliant blue, dotted with clouds that moved with purpose rather than fury. Zareth spread her wings fully, the left wing extending with only the slightest hesitation, where the brace supported damaged tissue. The morning sun caught her copper scales and set them ablaze with reflected light. She looked, Tobias thought, like something from ancient legends, terrible and beautiful in equal measure. "Zareth," he called out, surprised by the thickness in his voice. "Thank you. For saving me. For letting me help. For reminding me that being alive means more than just surviving." The dragon turned her great head, eyes swirling with emotions too complex for words. "And thank you, Tobias Reed, for teaching an old dragon that repair is possible. That what breaks can be tended. That solitude is not the same as sanctuary." She crouched, muscles bunching with coiled power. Then she leaped. The first wing beat was thunder made physical. Air compressed and exploded beneath membrane and scale. Zareth dropped for a heart-stopping moment, gravity reasserting its ancient claim. Then the second beat came, stronger, more confident. The brace held, distributing the stress exactly as designed. The damaged wing pulled its weight, working in harmony with its stronger partner. Zareth rose, not struggling, not fighting for every foot of altitude, but rising with the grace that was her birthright. She climbed in a widening spiral, testing her limits, feeling the wind remember her body and welcome it back to the currents. Tobias watched from the ledge, hardly breathing as the dragon climbed higher and higher. She called out, a sound that was pure joy crystallized into vibration. Birds scattered from hidden perches, startled by the return of an apex predator to the morning sky. For 10 glorious minutes, Zareth danced with the air. She banked and soared, dove and climbed, relearning the vocabulary of flight she had been forced to forget. The left wing held steady, the brace functioning perfectly under real-world stresses. Finally, she circled back toward the cave, approaching with the confidence of someone who knew landing was no longer an exercise in controlled falling. She touched down on the ledge with precise grace, wings folding with a satisfied whisper. The expression on her face defied description. Triumph mixed with relief, joy touched with the bittersweet ache of having mourned something now reclaimed. I flew, she said simply, as if the statement contained all truth. You flew, Tobias agreed, grinning so wide his face hurt. Zareth's joy suddenly dimmed slightly. You will leave soon. Your people will come searching for survivors. They will take you back to your life. Yes, Tobias said slowly, the reality settling over him. The emergency beacon will bring them eventually. And you will return to Earth? To the house with too many echoes? He considered this, looking out at the battered but surviving landscape of Thesara. I don't think so, he said finally. I came here running from grief. But you taught me something important. Pain isn't healed by distance. It's healed by finding new purposes, new connections, by fixing things that matter. What will you do? Stay on Thesara, Tobias decided, the words feeling right as he spoke them. Help rebuild what the floods destroyed. There will be ventilation systems to repair, infrastructure to restore, communities that need someone who speaks to machines with kindness. He smiled. And there's a dragon in these mountains who might need the occasional adjustment to her brace. Zareth's eyes widened. You would visit, here? If you'll have me, Tobias said. I've grown fond of algae lamps and volcanic warmth, and of conversations with someone who understands that being broken and being whole aren't opposites, just different stages of the same journey. The dragon lowered her head until her snout was level with Tobias's chest. Then you are welcome, Tobias Reed. As often as the path brings you, this cave has been lonely too long, and I find I have grown fond of company that fixes things rather than breaking them further. They stood together on the ledge as the sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the storm's residue. Below, the world began its slow process of healing. Above, the sky stretched open and infinite, full of possibilities neither of them had dared imagine days before. Tell me, Zareth said eventually, a playful note entering her voice. Do you think that brace could be improved? Perhaps with better materials we could extend my flight time, increase my maneuverability. Tobias laughed, the sound clear and genuine. Are you already planning modifications? I spent 7 years grounded, Zareth replied. I have considerable lost time to recover, and you, I have noticed, are happiest when you have problems to solve. Then we'll work on it together, Tobias agreed. Dragons and engineers make a good team, apparently. Apparently, Zareth echoed, amusement warming the word. They remained there as the morning stretched into afternoon, planning improvements and sharing dreams. Two unlikely friends who had found each other in a storm and discovered that rescue runs both directions, that sometimes the saved and the savior are the same person wearing different faces, that healing begins not with fixing what's broken, but with the decision to try. And high above the crimson peaks, where thermal winds remembered ancient songs, the sky waited patiently for a copper-scaled dragon who had finally reclaimed her wings. The end,